Hi, Suzanne.
Hi, Cecilia.
Welcome. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too.
Um, Always amazed to see the incredible things that Intel is demonstrating with respect to leadership and CSR, a lot of it led by you. So would be very interested to kind of start at the top. Give us an overview of your strategy. I know you have a new strategy, a 2030 strategy. What does that look like?
Yeah, no, thanks so much. I'm really happy to be here with you today. So Intel's had a very long history, as you and I've talked about, in corporate responsibility and setting public goals and driving transparency. It's really since the mid 90s. But we were coming up on the milestone of hitting our 2020 goals. And as we were doing that, we were looking at the external environment. We're having different kinds of discussions across the company about what it would take to lead over the next decade. And certainly a lot of the trends that Whitney just went through is what we were already starting to see develop. And then certainly I think we saw, dramatically increase during COVID. One of the things that we did as we were looking at the strategy, we were looking at what investors were looking at differently, how our customers were setting bolder goals, and also what we're hearing from our employees and future talent. So our new strategy, we actually launched it in May, in the middle of the pandemic, and we did really think about it. Was that really the right time to set out these new goals? And to what Whitney had just talked through, we had that conversation about not only was it important for us to continue, to set out those bold goals for ourselves on the issues that have always been important to us, but that we knew it was important to continue to raise the bar for ourselves, but also really look at different types of collaboration. So our new 2030 RISE strategy and goals sets out to build a more responsible, inclusive, sustainable world, all enabled through our technology and the expertise and passion of our employees. And so that strategy has three main components to it from each of those in each of those areas to raise the bar for ourselves, but also look across the technology industry of what we can help work together with our customers and others to advance at a system level, and then set out these big global challenges that are aspirational in nature, but it really require us to work with a much broader group of stakeholders to look at new ways to apply technology to these global challenges and really to think about new ways to work together. So really excited about where we are and kind of where we're going. But I think we just know in this environment the challenges are even greater than we've ever faced before.
Yes. So as you say, the challenges are even greater now. So, I commend you for going ahead and launching the strategy, even though we're facing, in the middle of COVID-19. So how are events like COVID-19 testing your strategy? I mean, there's nothing like, a pandemic to really see how your strategy works in this new world that we're all dealing with.
Yeah, no, I mean, from the beginning of the response, certainly the primary focus was on the health and safety of our employees, both for the employees that continue to work to make sure our factories continue to run. Intel technology is part of 95% of the digital infrastructure, so we needed to continue to keep making sure we could deliver to our customers, and especially around the initial, the health solutions that we're a part of. Um, you know, but then we also started to look as we went through the pandemic, how do we help make sure most of our employees were now going to be working from home? How do we make sure that they had the flexibility they needed, the support they needed, the ergonomic equipment that they needed to continue to work safely? So we invested about 100 million in additional benefits for all of our employees. And then certainly our local communities. We've always had a very strong engagement with local community partners, and they were hurting and struggling. So a lot of financial support and in-kind support from our employees there. One of the things and one of the key learnings and really dovetailed perfectly into our new strategy was we launched a pandemic response technology initiative in April, just ahead of launching the full strategy. But that really brought together different parts of the company, different external partners and customers to accelerate the use of technology and development and funding of technology solutions in the areas of healthcare, online learning, and economic recovery. And so we announced an initial commitment of $50 million to support that initiative, and to date have invested 30 million with 100 different partners in more than 200 projects, everything from virtual ICU solutions to kind of online learning solutions. So what it taught us, though, was that same level of collaboration, that same engagement of the different business units, our government affairs groups, our local community partners, our senior leadership, is what you need to apply to things like social justice, racial justice, climate change as well. So I think that need to be more integrated and to be more collaborative really came through in that solution.
So definitely, you're leading, I think, on a lot of this. I'm hearing that, this current crisis, the economy, or several, right? The economy, race relations, public health, that investors and customers are expressing more interest in what companies are doing to address these issues. So what is their strategy and what's their long-term approach? Are you seeing, an increase on calls from say investors around ESG related issues specifically to these areas, or just in general? Is there a heightened sense of interest?
Yeah, and we've been doing proactive outreach with investors on kind of environmental, social, and governance issues for many years, and in partnership with our investor relations team and our corporate secretary's office. So we've been seeing that increase for the last 2 to 3 years, especially with a whole range of investors. But certainly since the pandemic, we've gotten more questions related to our overall coronavirus response, health and safety issues, broader human capital management questions, particularly around inclusion and our response to social equity and racial justice issues. It was interesting. Earlier this week, there were a couple of different presentations, one with our CEO and our Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer, where our CEO did comment specifically on this, about how investors are asking about how are you investing in and supporting your talent, how are you using that to deliver on your purpose. And even our investor relations director had a presentation that asked kind of a similar thing. So I think we've done what we can do also on our side to make sure all of this is integrated when we talk about our strategy and purpose, and integrating it into our 10K, into our proxy statement, into our earnings materials. But we're also seeing the pull on the other side.
Yes. I think integration is the key, right? Integrating all of these new issue areas into broader CSR. So if you were to compare conversations perhaps that you had with customers a year ago to the conversations you're having now, how do conversations with customers differ, if they do?
Yeah, I think we're seeing some shifts happen since we launched our new strategy. We've had conversations with customers for many years, and we've worked very closely, especially on issues like supply chain responsibility, directly with our customers on driving that system level change. But I think we had a lot of touch points, especially with some of the big tech companies on both sides. So lots of touch points on the environmental side or diversity inclusion side. But what we've been seeing since we launched is being able to bring together kind of a broader group and really up-level that conversation with a higher strategy discussion in terms of how do our 2030 goals and strategy support their 2030 goals and strategy, and really finding opportunities for how we can work more closely together moving forward.
Great. And so we've covered a lot of things. Would you say that there's any, if you had to give advice to all of us, what would be like the one or two things you would say?
Yeah, and you hit on it. One is integration, and two is collaboration. I think on the integration piece, one thing, we're pretty well integrated in a distributed model across Intel. But the one thing I think that we're all learning, no matter where you sit in the industry or companies, is integration is never done. It's an ongoing process, and especially if your company is going through a significant transformation, that level of integration and continue to bring in different groups, continues. But that's, I think, one of the most important things right now. I mean, the different conversations we're driving with our finance organization, with our product teams, with sales and marketing, I think it's really changing, I think, how we can make sure that this really is not viewed as something separate or nice to do, but tying that connection to value. And then in that collaboration model, really thinking about new ways that, we're not all trying to get credit for the big things that we're doing, but we are trying to think of how do we really get to the right solutions, not duplicate efforts, but also bring different kinds of insight into into the conversation.
Great. So I just have to ask you one more thing before we go. So we're both on the board of Net Impact, an organization that we care deeply about, and I think that has influenced the work that we do. So what trends are you seeing emerge in this next generation of leadership? And what new management skills do you feel they're going to need moving forward based on your experience?
Yeah, I think this is really, I guess, with all the stress and bad news that seems to come out daily in the world, I do think the conversations I'm having with emerging leaders and also really experienced leaders, the other thing I think is important is, the leadership of the future, no matter what generation you're from, needs to really be thinking about these things in a much more integrated way. And we need to find a way that everybody, no matter where they sit in an organization, can see how they can contribute to having a positive impact. Everyone is looking for meaning in these times and meaning in how their work connects to something bigger, than us all. So I think it's a hopeful time. I think we have a lot we need to do to support people. People are really struggling, whether they're looking for a job, whether they're in a company and they're balancing everything. So I think it's really thinking about how do we connect people and really support people in this new type of leadership moving forward.
Great. Suzanne, thank you very much. We've all enjoyed hearing from you. I've learned a lot and look forward to staying connected and seeing what great things Intel continues to do. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you, Cicely. I always love talking to you. Thank you.